This film is dedicated to the prominent literary figure of the 1920s, F. Scott Fitzgerald. He forever changed the way literature was viewed in this prosperous era. Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald was born on September 24, 1896, in St. Paul, Minnesota, to Mary McKillen and Edward Fitzgerald. His father was a furniture manufacturer from Maryland. However, when his business failed within the first decade of F. Scott's life, his family was forced to move to New York, where Edward became a salesman for the Procter & Gamble Company, and as a result, F. Scott and his family had to move back and forth between Buffalo and Syracuse. In 1908, Edward Fitzgerald lost his job, and at the age of 12, F. Scott was forced to move back to St. Paul, Minnesota, and live off of his mother's inheritance. It was there that he attended the St. Paul Academy, and at age 13, his first piece of writing was printed in the school newspaper. In 1911, F. Scott's parents sent him away to the Newman School in New Jersey, a prestigious Catholic preparatory school. In 1913, he graduated from Newman and decided to remain in New Jersey to study at Princeton University. There at Princeton, F. Scott was involved in many different organizations to develop his writing skills, such as the Screenwriters Guild Line and the Triangle Club. However, as a result of dedicating so much of his time to writing, his grades began slipping, and in 1917 he was placed on academic probation. Later that year, he dropped out of school and joined the military for World War I. In the weeks before F. Scott was transferred to a base, he began fearing that he was going to die while in the war, so he hastily wrote The Romantic Egotist in the first weeks before going to war. Later, this memoir was published under a different name, This Side of Paradise. Publishers encouraged F. Scott to submit more work in the future. F. Scott was then transferred to Camp Sheridan outside of Montgomery, Alabama, where he served as a second lieutenant. It was there that he met his wife, Zelda Sayre. In 1919, when the war ended, F. Scott returned to New York, where he planned to launch a career in advertising, and he hoped to convince Zelda to marry him. Within 2 years, F. Scott and Zelda had gotten married and gave birth to their first and only child, a daughter, Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald. In the 1920s, Fitzgerald began producing short stories about the young, post-war rich generation for magazines. These include Bernice Bobs Her Hair, May Day, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, The Diamond as Big as the Ritz, and Babylon Revisited. It wasn't until 1925 that Fitzgerald became a well-known literary figure for the book The Great Gatsby. The book was published and unsold for 15 years before it became universally recognized. It was acclaimed as one of the greatest novels of the century. Fitzgerald went to Hollywood alone in the summer of 1937 with a contract for screenwriting. The relationship with his wife, Zelda, became disastrous because he was never home. As a result, Zelda became mentally unstable and was checked into a mental ward while Fitzgerald became an alcoholic. Their only daughter, nicknamed Scotty, was forced to move with her father. Fitzgerald found happiness again when he fell in love with Sheila Graham. Later, Fitzgerald would die in Graham's apartment on December 21, 1940 from a heart attack. Zelda died in a fire within the mental ward. Although Fitzgerald died believing himself to be a failure, he will forever be known as one of the greatest literary figures of all time, forever changing the way the 1920s were viewed.